Fans, it's Wally Kern and Nanette, and Nanette's checking on some things, and we have a great show. I hope today we have Big G with Luna Geckos coming on the show in just a few minutes. What I need from you is, can you let me know, does the sound okay? Is the sound okay? Can you see everything okay? Is the video okay? And if we can get a good thumbs up here, we're going to go ahead and move forward. We're still waiting for Big G to join in, but that will give me a chance to kind of do some introductions and talk a little bit. I've got a Gary Order Exotic saying, looks good. Sound okay, Gary? How does the sound sound? Sound is good. So we're all okay. Everybody's in. Nanette's running off to check on something. So bear with us for just a minute. Let me talk about tonight's show. It's going to be African Fat Tails, and it's Big G from Luna Geckos. If you haven't visited Luna Geckos, you need to get over there, and you need to get over and watch his stream. Big G is a personality, one of a kind, and just a blast to listen to. All kinds of information. It's an amazing channel, one of my favorites to watch. Again, what a personality. I'm going to show a couple of pictures here if I can. If we can show them. Okay, let's get back over here. And I tell you folks, this is a show I have anticipated for a long time, for a long time. What I plan to do with this expert gecko breeder program is to present people that really have the upper hand at breeding animals. And we're going to challenge them with not just beginner information, but advanced information as well. And it looks like we have Nanette on the screen too. That is outstanding. We are good to go here. So we've had a couple of great guests on this expert breeder show, and I think we're going to have a number of wonderful guests coming up as well. As I mentioned before, tonight is Big G, Luna Geckos, and I want to get this ready before we bring him on, and let's go ahead. Big G, are you ready? Let's go ahead and get you in. Big G.
It worked. We almost had technical difficulty again.
I tell you, and I want to start off the show, I'm going to spend just like 10 seconds. My biggest apology to you and our audience for the last show that we did. They have such an outstanding and top-of-the-line breeder, and then I had some personal issues here, technical issues. I had personal issues, but we had technical issues as well. So my big apologies.
No.
And I appreciate everybody's patience, but I tell you, when something goes wrong technically, it really kills me for sure.
It happens. Can you hear me fine, Nanette? How we doing?
Yep.
We doing good?
Good. Nanette disappeared, so
I see her. Well,
because you've got a split screen. That's all.
let me explain to you about tonight and our almost technical difficulties. You sent me two links. You sent me the link to the show and the link to. For some reason, I was pasting the wrong link, so it was my fault. I panicked. Handy Dandy came running in to help me. She's right here, and she looked at the link in Chrome and she said, those numbers don't match. That's the wrong link. So I put the right link in and we got right in. So my fault.
No worries at all. Actually, we do have a word. Nanette and I have a word for people that do stuff like that. But we're, this is a kind of a PG. Nice. So thank you, Handy Dandy, for bringing Big G on the show. Otherwise, I would be juggling or something. I don't know, whatever.
He has headphones in. I can't hear anything.
She wants to introduce her friend. She bought this at the Stafford, Texas herb show, and she named it Wally.
I don't know what to say about that. So I'm guessing
he's anatomically correct.
Okay, I really don't know what to say about that. All I know is that it kind of rolls up in a ball and it kind of just stays like that. It rests and sleeps for hours and hours. Yeah, that's me. That would be me. And for you, Big G, from last night, I was on your show for a little bit. Who was that?
That was Miss Poppy Dog. She's going upstairs, so your viewers don't have to listen to her snore.
Well, and I'm sure, not with you, but other guests, I'm sure that, they're used to that with me snoring because I kind of doze off once in a while. So for Big G, I was on Big G's show, was it last night, 2 nights ago, a week ago? I can't remember anymore. This is all one blur.
Which was the one last night was we did an Instagram live. It was the first time I've done some Instagram lives, but every live I had done previously, I don't think I was ever on camera. What I would catch a gecko hatching and I would hurry up and pop it in the light box and just put the camera or put my phone on a tripod and go live. And I probably have 4 or 5 of those up where people would come in and they'd watch that gecko hatch. Some of them are 5 minutes. I think one went like an hour and 15 minutes. And it was a funny one because it was a really good one. But as soon as it was over and I pressed end live, my phone went into emergency overheat shutdown. So you imagine if that would happen like 2 minutes earlier, the gecko, people have been watching for an hour and like 13 minutes, and then live has ended. So I just made it on that, and I've my voice is in the background, but it's always been a gecko. So last night was the first one we did where it was more of a YouTube live like this, where it was more of a little less production on Instagram, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
Funny. That was a lot of fun. I think the Instagram thing went really, really well. I have to, again, apologize for jumping in there and interfering and everything, but I did want to say that last night I went out and I bought my second gecko, and I am now the proud owner of a new company name called Supreme Geckos. So I'm pretty happy with that.
You better check because I think Adam registered it last night, so you might have to buy it from him.
I'll have to trade one of my geckos and then become Supreme Gecko again and work my way back to that position, I guess.
Yeah, that's what's fun about it, right? Is we just kind of jabbing it, taking jabs at each other back and forth was pretty funny. I don't know if you had already gone, but there's a breeder that's pretty commonly engaged with us called Palmetto State Geckos. And, he found out I was from West Virginia. So like the whole second half of the show was West Virginia jokes, but it was just it was a lot of fun. So
I almost
lot lighter. I think just the general feel of the Instagram live just felt more like, just a bunch of buddies hanging out and just kind of teasing each other. So this a little less formal. Yeah,
this is pretty formal here on YouTube.
I almost wore a tie.
Yeah, I'm disappointed actually that you didn't. But we have this formal session here on YouTube, and I try to make it formal by saying expert breeder and all that. And then you had a great show last night on Instagram. I think your next move, Big G, is to go over to TikTok, and then you have to create some kind of a dance move or something for that.
We're on TikTok. I've seen
your videos, but you don't dance, so that's what I'm going to see next. Yeah, but I only have like 3 videos on TikTok. I'm not the expert that the Big G is on TikTok. So,
you know what TikTok was? This is funny because we're filming geckos and we're trying to get pictures and we're trying to get quality content to be able to use it for either YouTube or for Instagram. And anybody that's ever taken a picture of a gecko knows that maybe 1 or 2 of the 100 that you take, you can actually use because the sucker's running and everything's, they don't listen. And every once in a while I'll be trying to shoot a little video or something and they'll do something wild. I can't use it for anything. And there was TikTok. So I just kind of started throwing scrap stuff up on TikTok, not spending a whole lot of time or paying a lot of attention to it. And then one video ends up getting like 190,000 views. And now I feel pressure. Like now I have to put quality stuff on TikTok. I can't just put up this extra stuff. So Now
Well,
we've got a whole nother job to do, which is worry about our TikTok videos. So
it is. It's a completely different job. But if you ever feel pressure that you have to keep doing better and better, slide over to the Supreme Gecko TikTok channel or
I
whatever it's
follow
called,
you.
and you will have no pressure whatsoever to do quality videos.
I follow you. Your music selection is out of this world. That's something that I don't think people realize is I have that same issue on Instagram and TikTok. Is both my Instagram account and my TikTok account are business accounts. And if you're a creator or an influencer or a private account, you have access to regular music. Like you can play Prince 1999.
Yeah.
If you're a business account, you can only use licensed commercial music. So if you ever watch my stories or anything, you never hear popular music because I'm not allowed to use it unless I pay for it. And, I'm not, for a 15-second Instagram story, I'm not going to go buy the rights to 1999. So.
But when you say that you can't use it, you mean you can use it, but you'll get
it's blocked.
I
can't even see it. And then when I first started TikTok, I don't know, a year or so ago, I was just a private account, and I had posted some videos way back then using, commercially or licensed music, and they're still up, but the music doesn't play anymore. So at some point when I converted it to a business account, it took all my access to that music. So there's benefits when you're a business account. You have, you can list your website, you can have links, you can, you get benefits with being a business account, but you also get penalized. Like, right. Like on Instagram, because I'm a business account, you can shop directly off of Instagram and Facebook directly. You can just press the shop button and you can buy our merch. You can't buy animals because Instagram, Facebook doesn't do that.
Right.
But if I was a private account, I can't link to anything commercial. So there's pros and cons, right?
When I first started watching your channel, your YouTube channel, I really realized that you have this down pat. And I would love to, and this won't be the show to do it, but I would love to have you on at another time in kind of a group panel with some other creators, and just talk about YouTube and talk about the challenges with Instagram and managing these social identities and how we can do that and how we can help each other as a community to do a better job. I think that'd be a great show, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's a great idea. It wasn't specific. It wasn't that specific. It was more of a general topic, but we did a Luna Live, I don't know, a month or so ago. You were actually on that one with a chief marketing officer from the hospitality industry, named Vince Lantini, and that whole Luna Live was about marketing and marketing concepts and brand development. And I don't care if you're in the gecko business, selling shoes, making widgets, marketing, general marketing concepts. Marketing is marketing, and you just have to apply it to your industry or to your product. I think people don't spend in our community. We spend a ton of time consuming content related to reptiles, but we should be out there looking at, you should carve out some of that time and use it to watch some business. I know you follow some business channels. What's that guy from Vegas? I really like him. I know you've mentioned him a couple times.
Nimmer. Is Nimmer from Vegas? I believe so.
No, Neiman. Neiman's a good one. No, it's the other guy. It's the Think Media guys.
Yes.
Think Media, that's it. Those guys are from Vegas. So they really focus on YouTube. But you should carve out some of your time. Some advice would be carve out some of your time to learn about business and learn about marketing, and learn about brands. People think they go on Canva and they create a circle logo and they're like, I have a business now. I have a brand. That's not a brand. That's a name.
Yes.
Brands create an emotional connection. You see the Nike swoosh and you have an emotional response. It might be a good one, might be a bad one, but nonetheless, you have an emotional response to that brand. You see that Apple icon, same thing. A true brand creates an emotional response and a connection with its audience. It's
And
not a name.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that you're doing a great job. And when I was a kid, I used to watch a fishing show when I would visit my folks down in Mississippi. And it was Bill Dance Outdoors. I remember this.
I remember that show, yeah.
Do you really? And
Yeah,
he
I did.
He wore the T for Texas hat. And you knew it was a Bill Dance show every single time because of the hat. And I realized at that point that I would always have something that people, if I didn't have the shirt on, and throw it misspelled and throw it in people's faces, and we say, the funny thing is now I can walk through a reptile show like we have NARDC in Schaumburg, Illinois, this weekend coming up, and I can walk through the show and going down one aisle, I'll get stopped 5 or 6 times. Hey, I know you do the YouTube videos, and that's great, and it starts up a conversation. We can talk about animals. And I think that opens people up a little bit, right?
I agree. That's, the common denominator. We talked about this a little bit last night. We don't all have to agree, and we don't even have to like each other, but we do all have something in common. We all love animals. We all love reptiles. And, in my niche, we specifically love geckos. So
exactly. And if it's funny,
at the end of the day, we have that in common, right? Every one of us.
Exactly. And, just like anything else, there's going to be some issues in the community. But I tell you what, and I've said this to isopod people too. I love the isopod community. I love the gecko community too, because there's some great people. And I think that you're certainly one of them. And I again, can't recommend more Big G, Luna Geckos. And I'm going to see if I can throw some links in the conversation here real quick. Great channels on Instagram, great channels on obviously TikTok, and you're gaining some huge momentum on YouTube as well. I'm really liking what you're doing there. You make it fun, you make it educational. That's kind of what I'm doing, except I don't bring the fun like you do. So I try, but
I call it our YouTube. We're having a lot of fun on YouTube. Just that creative process is a blast. Editing can be a pain at times, but it's fun. Sometimes you have in your head that exactly what you want that scene or that little cut to look like, and then you finally get to the editing software and you're like, oh, that's not going to work. So you either got to go back down and retake it, or you're just like, nah, we're just going to cut that scene. We can't do that. But we're having a lot of fun. But I call it an educational sandwich. And so the whole concept of our YouTube channel is to create an educational sandwich.
Yep.
And so the meat on the sandwich, if there are any vegans or vegetarians, just pretend I said tofu. Whatever the substance in the middle of the sandwich is the educational piece. And then the bread is the entertainment. And then the condiments are, the extra characters. So we pop in Miss Poppy Dog, we pop in Handy Dandy. So we're creating, if I just sat there with a chalkboard and showed you mathematical formulas, you'd be like, this channel, I'm never coming back to this. So we try to create, the whole concept from the beginning was, let's create an educational sandwich.
Yes.
So, try to entertain you while you actually maybe learn something along the way. So it's been a lot of fun, really having a blast over there. And I'll tell you, you talk about Instagram all the time, and I am, so grateful and thankful for our Instagram followers, but I don't take any credit for Instagram. I guess a few years ago when all this was starting, I wanted Wally. Hey,
I think I hit the wrong button.
Don't touch the computer.
I was full screen for a minute. I was just, I don't know if you heard me, but because you were, asking me about Instagram the other day, and I take no credit for it. And I'll tell you what happened. The genesis of this was my daughter is Soul Geckos. And you've heard this story. I fell in love with what she was doing with the geckos, and I wanted to do some geckos. And so I started doing them. And then I started producing babies, and I was like, hey, will you sell these on Soul Geckos? And she was like, I don't like your picture quality. It's bad for my brand. I can't post those. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do with these babies? So she had Soul Geckos. I said, well, sun and the moon, I'll do Luna Geckos. So that's how it started. And then I'm all ready to set up a Facebook account. And she's like, Dad, only old mean people are on Facebook. You want an Instagram account. And I'm like, what's Instagram? And, she was talking about me. She's like, old mean people. And I said, what are you talking about? And she's like, nobody my age goes on Facebook. You want an Instagram account. So I have both. I believed her, but I didn't believe her. So I have both. I have Facebook and I have Instagram. But the focus, really, because of my daughter, she's 19 now, but the focus from day one was primarily Instagram for us. And we've had a lot of success there, and it's intentional now. It was an accident at the time because my daughter said, don't do a Facebook account. And that's why. So that's why, we started on Instagram. And you're seeing a lot of folks. You're really seeing, for the longest time, it was, two kind of diverse or separate worlds. There was the Facebook group of reptile people, and there was the Instagram group, and they kind of didn't cross.
No,
you're seeing this migration where, people are on both platforms now. And so it's good.
I think you're seeing a little bit of it. I think that you're still seeing that separation where there's a crowd on Facebook, there's a crowd on Instagram. I'm having a hard time accepting Instagram. I post once a day when I can, but I tell you what, I spend probably a couple of hours on Facebook a day, to be honest, answering questions. I get a lot of questions on Facebook.
A lot of private messages.
I get a lot of private messages. So I can be downstairs, I'll come upstairs, and I jump into, this went off. I jumped into Facebook, and somebody sees that I'm active, and now I've got private messages bouncing up. So I think everybody is different, and everybody handles it differently. But what I like about what you're doing with Instagram is you're posting some beautiful, beautiful pictures. Now watch how I do this, and especially of African fat tails. You post some great African fat tails.
Good transition.
Just nice little segue there.
Before we get into that, though,
Yeah,
because I almost was going to cancel because you had Ryan and Erica on. I can't follow that. How, I can't. How can I follow that show? You should have put them after me, not.
So I'm going to break this to you. You were talking about the editing and everything. So we spent all day Saturday with Ryan and Erica, and just really, really, really close friends. But we ran, I don't even know how many hours of video we ran, and stopped the camera several times because it was filling up. I got home and I had hours and hours. So I spent all day Sunday, all day Monday, and then half of a day Tuesday editing that down to try to get probably 6 or 8 hours down to an hour, and as close as I could get was an hour and 10 minutes.
It was a great show. I watched it this afternoon. It reminded me of a story, and a real quick story.
Yeah, no.
Several years ago, I was I went. I don't know if you know what Touchdown Club is, right? They're like boosters for college football teams, and
yes.
All major universities have Touchdown Club luncheons, and I went to West Virginia University, and I was working over here in Southwest Louisiana, and they were having a Touchdown Club luncheon over in Houston, and they invited me, so I went, and at the time our athletic director was Oliver Luck. And Oliver is Andrew Luck's dad. Oliver was he was a Rhodes Scholar, professional athlete. I mean, the man's a genius. And then so Oliver spoke. He opened the lunch. Genius. And then our football coach was Dana Holgerson at the time, who is a football genius, but he's a train wreck. His hair was messed up, his tie was half on, and he looked like he was sleeping outside all night.
he had a little Nick Nolte look going.
Yeah, and then he gets, and Dana's this little dude with just a couple gray hairs, and he gets up there and he's like, I hate when they do this to me. He said, they always make me come up here after Oliver, and I look like such an idiot. He was using other words, but he said, but I'm okay with it because right after me, Huggy Bear's up. And Coach Bob Huggins is our basketball coach.
Okay.
And he said, and after Huggy talks, you're going to think I'm the genius. so I'm hoping so Ryan just, Ryan and Erica making me look like Dana Holgerson here. So you got to pick your next guest wisely. So I look good again. That's where I was going with that story.
I struggled with that interview because I didn't really feel like I was worthy to present that information. I feel very fortunate because this is, I'm going to throw a quick plug in, everybody. I apologize. This is a blatant plug. Go to the video that I just posted yesterday. Today's Tuesday. And make sure you watch it. It's an hour long, and there is a crap load of information in there. And there wasn't 10 seconds I could have edited out to make it shorter for more enjoyable viewing. Every piece of information in that video is very, very important. And it's because of what Ryan and Erica are doing and going to do and moving this company VivTech forward. So I'm done preaching, but please, people, if you don't watch my video, there's a couple of other videos out there. Make sure you watch it because the husbandry is number one. Husbandry is number one, and they're doing the right thing. So
I watched your video because we were on live till pretty late last night, so I had to catch up on some videos this morning, and I watched it this morning. And it was fantastic. So I've seen Ryan on a couple lives. This is the first time I've seen him talk about VivTech. I think I saw him on like Deadly Tarantula Girl or something not too long ago, where he said he's not at Zilla anymore, but it's, he's not ready to talk about why. And you got the why in your video. So every time I've seen Ryan on, he's an encyclopedia of reptile information. He's phenomenal. And he's entertaining. He's fun to watch. And it's the first time I had seen Erica. I've never met either one of them. It's the first time I had seen Erica, and I could see why she's the CEO, and Ryan now works for her. So
they are two peas in a pod. It's amazing. But you know what? The one thing that Ryan and Erica don't know, I'm going to do it. Watch. They don't know fat tails at all.
There we go. We're back. All right. I'm going to stay focused this time. I'm going to put Wally away over here.
It's my fault too. I can do this all night, and the net will confirm that.
Yeah. So let's preface this too with, you use, and I think I joked with you and said you're very loosely using the word expert. I do breed fat tails. I have successfully bred fat tails for 4 seasons now. This year, I was hoping to produce somewhere between 75 and 100. I'm going to come up a little bit short on that. Last season, I had quite a few females that were putting out, 6, 7. I think I even had one female put out 8 clutches, which is not normal for fat tails. I mean, those are leopard gecko numbers. And this season, they kind of went back to normal. So they're, 3, 4. I think I have one female at 5 clutches. So they're not as prolific as leopard geckos. So I extrapolated last year's numbers. I added a few more females this year, and I thought, well, I'm going to end up somewhere between 75 and 100. I'm probably going to end up between 60 and 75 for this season. So
that's a lot.
Pretty good number. A lot. Yeah, I think I have 39 out right now, and eggs cooking. Most of the females are done. Their season starts a lot earlier, so they are winding down. At this point, I think all but 2 females are done, and those 2 may be done. I'm waiting, just like a leopard gecko, they'll either just completely stop and you don't get any more eggs. Usually what happens, that last clutch or 2 will be water balloons, just like a leopard gecko. And they're done.
Do you find the first clutch as well sometimes with fat tails?
Not so
Sometimes.
much with the experienced breeders. It's pretty common with a first-time breeder, with a first-year breeder. But the girls that have been breeding for 2, 3, 4 years now, I wasn't seeing that first clutch dud. You can't afford a first clutch dud on fat tails because they're a lot of them are only going to give you typically 3 to 5 clutches, and they're done for the season. So water balloons are painful. It's not like a leopard where you're going to get 8, 10, 12 clutches, and you can afford to throw 4 of them away. They're not 4 clutches, but 3, 4 eggs away, and you don't feel that bad about it. I can't hear you, Wally. Can people on the chat hear me?
Can you hear me now?
There's Wally.
Okay.
I hear you now.
Trying to send. Yeah, Nanette's going to hit me upside the head or my hands or something. I want to show some of these. I want to show some of these fat tails and how beautiful they are. But I'm afraid that I'm going to dump the whole screen again. Let me ask this: would you recommend? And this is from Big LED. Would you recommend someone who just breeds leopard geckos to get into AFTs? And if so, why?
I would. That's a good question. I would get into species, just like the answer to the question of what morphs should I breed. I would get into species that interest you. If fat tails interest you, then by all means. I think what you'll find is surprisingly the care for the husbandry for fat tails is almost identical to leopard geckos. Now I'll tell you, so our setup is the same minus a food dish because they don't, and it goes to Andrew's question, I'll answer in a second. As they get to adulthood, they're pretty much eating crickets, and I'll expand on that a little bit after this. So I don't even bother with a food dish because I've yet to be able to train a cricket to stay in its dish. They go wherever they want. And then their water dishes are really cool. I get them from Strudy's, who has an Etsy store.
Okay.
Let me see if I can have one right here. This one's pretty weathered. It's been being used for a long time. But this is a water dish that has all these little bumps in it.
Yeah.
And so what's cool about this is the geckos still can drink because they lick down between these ridges.
Okay.
But if a cricket gets in a water dish, they climb back out and don't drown. So I haven't had to dump dead crickets out of my water dish for about 3 years, ever since I found Strudy. So I love these. So they'll have a water dish, a calcium dish, their hide, 1 or 2 hides, depending on what tub they're in. So set up essentially the same paper towel substrate. I use an Eco Earth tropical soil with a little bit of vermiculite in it is my mix that I keep in my lay boxes or my moist hides. Same as for leopard geckos. Here's where the differences happen is they like a little lower temperature. So I keep my hot side for leopard geckos at 92 Fahrenheit. I keep the African fat tails at 90. So it's a 2-degree difference. And they like a little bit more humidity. So if I'm spraying, it depends on time of year, right? Because ambient humidity depends on time of year and depends on where you live. So if you live in Florida, probably less. If you live in Nevada, probably more. You just got to kind of figure that out based on your individual circumstance. If your house has a whole home dehumidifier in it, your hides are going to dry out. So you got to figure that out. There's no set rule, right? So let's just, as an example, if I'm spraying leopard geckos, moist hides twice a week, fat tails are probably getting 3 times a week. So they like a little bit more humidity and a little lighter on the temperature, and boy, they love crickets. So this is the first season. This kind of goes back to Andrew's. Yeah. This is the first season that I am trying to feed, because I've heard a couple other breeders talk about this. I'm feeding babies. I'm raising dubia now. Last season I was in Toronto, Canada, and dubia are illegal in Canada. which is hilarious because there's nothing that escapes in Canada that can live other than a penguin. So that should be the only thing illegal in Canada, are like geese and penguins. That's the only thing that can live naturally. So no dubia. So I didn't have an opportunity to try dubia last year. So I'm back in the States, immediately started a couple dubia colonies, and I'm feeding the baby fat tails. The babies now have a food dish. So they're getting some baby dubia and some mealworms and small crickets. Typically a brand new hatched fat tail, they can eat a 1/2-inch cricket. So that's, what is that? A 3-week-old cricket? So it's not like you're dealing with pinheads. You're throwing in a 1/2-inch cricket. Yeah. And then by the time they're 3-4 weeks old, they're eating a 3/4 to a 1-inch cricket. I mean, they'll wipe them out. So I have about 80% of the babies are eating dubia. All of them are eating crickets. About 80% of them are eating the dubia out of the dish. And probably about 50% of them are eating the dubia and the mealworms when I put them in the dish.
Okay.
The trick is at some point they're going to turn to adults, and according to everybody, they just stop eating anything but crickets. I have a few adult females that'll eat a superworm or two. Yeah. I have a few adult females that'll eat a hornworm or a silkworm. I have no adults that'll eat a mealworm. And I have a couple adult males, because the adult males can get pretty big. I have a couple adult males that'll, every once in a while you got to purge out your dubia colony. When you're doing your sorting, you're like, I got a few too many males in here. Yep. So I'll scrape out the males and I'll just throw one in. I'll throw one in the gargoyles tanks. Gargoyles like big food. And I'll throw one. My big male leopard and big male African fat-tailed geckos can eat a full-size adult dubia. So I'll toss one in there just to thin out my, my dubia male ratio. But their primary diet is crickets. And that's the barrier that a lot of people struggle with fat tails, is they hate crickets.
Yes. We've been very fortunate. Not that I have, dozens of fat tails. I have a pair. And they just, maybe because I only feed them once every 4 or 5 weeks, when I put the mealworms in, they take them.
Hey, I'd eat mealworms too if you only fed me every 4 weeks.
So, ooh, a rock. I'll eat that rock. That's all I'm getting.
You got any salt, pepper?
Yeah, throw some salt in it. Put your finger in here and I'm going to get that too.
So do you really have 2 adults that are eating nothing but mealworms, or?
No, they don't eat the dubias and they'll eat crickets, but they eat mealworms like it's no problem at all.
They love the dubias, just like you were mentioning. They love dubias. I tend not to feed crickets too much because, we're running dubias all over the place. I get a lot of mealworms, just like, you with the leopard geckos. I try to stay away from the crickets. So that helps with the mealworms and the dubias, but not the crickets so much. So I tend not to do crickets that often. Just the sound. And I tell you what, you leave one bin of crickets unattended for 2 or 3 days and they all die and you get cricket soup. And that's the worst. Absolutely the worst.
Crystal walked in the bug room last night and informed me it stunk. Because of the crickets.
Yeah, because of the crickets.
Stink. I do have a couple tips on crickets.
Not buy them.
Yeah, tip 1: don't buy them. I put about a 1/2-inch layer of vermiculite on the bottom of the cricket tub, and the smell is their urine because it's got ammonia in it. Yep. And that vermiculite absorbs that urine, and it doesn't eliminate the smell, but it helps. Yep. And so that's tip on like how I keep them. Tip 2, this happened on accident because after the hurricane, we had big holes in the house. I think we had like 22 windows got blown out. We weren't living here. We were living in Toronto, and we came back. We came back down here to Lake Charles to oversee the reconstruction of our house here. And when we got back, we had some gaping holes, and so we were dealing with some, everything. I mean, I was in the gecko room cleaning one night, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I looked over, there was a big white cat and we don't have cats. So he was standing there looking at me. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Me? What are you doing here?" So he had figured out a way like through the wall and because they had, water mold remediation. They'd stripped drywall out. And so we had the sticky rodent traps kind of all over the place. And so that's pro tip 2. I don't think I caught a single rodent, but boy, I caught a lot of crickets in those things. So if you go to like Lowe's or Home Depot or Walmart and buy those sticky rodent traps, and if you're dealing with crickets, because they're going to get out, they always get out. So just kind of strategically in your reptile room, place a couple of those rodent traps out, and you'll catch yourself some crickets. So.
That's an outstanding idea. And I know I'm reading some of the comments here too, and a lot of people really don't like crickets. And it's if you have more than just a few animals, it's you have to have crickets. You have to bring crickets in. We had a question about your Eurobacteroides, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I have knobtail geckos, and it's talk about fat tails not taking mealworms. Mealworms aren't the best for knobtails, so I have to get crickets in for them and some other Australians. It's tough. And if I could offer one more tip for crickets, it's a lot of people don't keep them warm enough. So we're fortunate that we have this bug room, and we just throw the bins in the bug room where it's about 80 degrees. Could be warmer. Crickets love warm. And
I have an old arboreal rack that from Reptile Basics. I think it was an old Vivarium electronics rack. They don't even make them anymore because nobody puts cresteds in a heated rack. Yeah. But I bought one years ago, and it's now converted to a bug rack. So it's a 4-bin rack with the big, like 64 quart tubs.
Yes.
And the top two racks are crickets, and the bottom two. So I'll have 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch, and then the bottom two are 2 dubia colonies. And because they're in an arboreal rack with back tape, I can keep them at 90 degrees. And so if you want to keep crickets alive, you better be at least 80. If you want to breed them, you better get between 85 and 90, or you're never going to hatch a cricket. So
yeah. And make sure you have some kind of a water source, and
they dry out fast.
They dry out fast.
And that's the other thing. The same thing with dubia. If you want to successfully breed dubia, the higher the temperature, the better.
Exactly. I want to make sure that I understand African fat tails and the information that you just gave us. So for baby, and correct me if I missed something here, for babies and for adults, bare bottom, other than the paper towel, you miss them a little bit more than you missed your leopard geckos. Leopard geckos maybe 2 times a week, fat tails maybe 3 times a week. Food dish, water dish, cool food or water dish that you showed us, and you give a hide. What's that? And you have the lay box, and you use like a koi fiber in the lay box.
That is absolutely correct for adults.
Yeah.
Yes. Babies are a little more simpler. Yeah. Babies are in an 8-quart tub, and what we use, it's a much more simplistic setup for babies. So these tubs are long. They're very long. Nice. But they're very skinny. So it's like a big long tunnel. Yep. And they don't really make a hide that'll fit in these. So what's in this? This is 3-inch black PVC pipe that we cut in 6-inch lengths, and then we slice them. And that is a hide for a baby fat tail and a baby leopard gecko. So they get a baby gets a paper towel substrate. They get a hide. They get a food dish. Normally I use those white disposable ones. Yep. I ran out, and I had a bunch of these laying around, so it's going in here. And then this is a little calcium dish. These are also from Strudy's. I love these because they have a little foot on them. So they're like $1 a piece. So if you use your bottle cap, and as soon as a gecko steps on it, they tip it over, right?
Right.
Now nobody's figured out how to stop them from pooping in it. That's yet to be figured out. Maybe Ryan and Erica will figure that out. And
maybe I think that's phase 4.
Yeah, that might be.
I
So
still-
now that, because you
Yeah.
notice there's not a water dish in here with babies, and babies need higher humidity, just like leopard gecko babies. So I spray babies every other day. So I don't spray the whole tub. I spray, like this back third
Yeah.
where the hide is to create that humidity back there.
Yes.
So,
And I'm going to add something that you certainly do, I'm sure. But when you spray, you mist. Before you spray the next time, you make absolutely positively sure that everything dries out so that you're not misting on top of additional water, right?
yeah. And based on the humidity in the room,
Exactly.
and this time of year, I've gotten it down to where it's, it's every 2 days.
Yes.
In the winter, it might be every day, but the good news in the winter, I don't have as many babies as I have in June and July. So by the time I get to January, February, season's over. Fat tail season's actually just starting because fat tail season starts early. We're breeding fat tails by December. So
Oh, yeah. Our schedule is so far off from everybody else's.
yeah, fat tail breeding is pretty different. Our typical leopard gecko season is same as everybody, same as most people, not everybody.
Right.
I mean, it's that January, February until, June, July. And now you always have those first year females that they don't start until like May or June, and they're going to go till September. I don't think I've ever gotten a leopard gecko egg in October. Now I've had October hatches, but I don't think I've ever gotten a leopard gecko egg in October, November, or December. I get fat tail eggs starting in December, but they're usually by March. Most of them are done. The only girls that are still laying right now into like April, May, and maybe a straggler or two into early June are first year females. So because they didn't breed until March, April instead of December.
And something that you've said a couple of times now, this all depends on where you're located, your circumstances. Yeah. I mean, we're super, super late here because I kind of go with, the environment. Everything that we do is downstairs. So our basement is moderate, but it cools down in the winter, but it takes a long time in the springtime to warm up. And I don't put heaters, I don't crank up. It goes when it goes. And so we might not start getting some leopard gecko eggs until May, June-ish. So we're always super, super late. But that's okay. That we adjusted and that's
fine.
We adjusted and that's just what works for us.
No, it works out great because everyone else is sold out and you're the only guy left with geckos. So you're killing it all winter.
All winter, and especially tax season comes around, and I have a lot of animals ready for February. I'm going to throw something else out there, and I really, really like your setup. One thing, because our house is so dry, I've replaced, especially for the babies, we used to use little soup bowls, styrofoam soup bowls for hides, and it worked really super well, especially with the paper towel. I started replacing them, a couple of years ago, for the first probably month for leopard geckos, well, everything, crested geckos, leopard geckos, with egg cartons. And I did that because you could spray down, and they're cheap, number one, and when they get dirty, you just toss them and cut them up. And no, the cardboard.
The cardboard ones.
Yeah.
Same ones you use for crickets and
dubious. Yep.
Dubious.
Yeah. So we started doing that, a while back, and that seems to help a little bit with the humidity. Just throw it out there. Again, everybody's different. Everybody has different needs.
Well, the reason this happened, this PVC pipe happened, is nobody makes a hide. Think about every hide. The opening's always on this side, right?
Yes.
Well, those tubs are long and skinny. The gecko wouldn't be able to get in if it was against the wall. I needed one that had an opening on the front, and no one makes them. So I said, well, I'll make my own. And the cool thing about this PVC pipe is some of these pipes I've been using for 4 or 5 years now. I never throw these away. So now, I'm creating no waste. I mean, it is plastic, but it's a product that's made for plumbing, and I just repurpose it. And I've never had to throw one of these away ever.
I'm pretty cheap too. I should say I'm very cheap. So the little styrofoam bowls, I would wash them out until there was more holes than there was really styrofoam. And so there wasn't really a hide left anymore.
And you get your curtains.
Yeah,
Nicholas,
then when you get into an adult setup, it's the same type of deal. It's it's a Ziploc container that we put a hole.
You put a hole in the hide or on the side, yeah.
Yeah, I put it in the side because what I like about these tubs is they have a ton of floor space, but they're not terribly tall. So there's enough room. The geckos hang out on the top. It's like an extra place for them because it's so tight. They feel like they're in a cave up there. So I always find the geckos sitting on top or in the hide.
Yeah.
So I had to go in here to be able to give them another place to be able to hang out, and it's worked great. There's downside to it, right? When they're laying eggs, they kick all the dirt out. Versus if it was in the top, the dirt stays in. But
yeah, you say that, but Nanette, Nanette usually works on our leopard geckos. We trade on and off. There's enough that it keeps us both busy for a long time. And sure enough, if I'm working on some other geckos on the other side of that room, like the Periodora picked up, I can hear her say, "Stop making a mess. I got to clean up after you all." So even though we have our holes in the top, they still
make a mess.
Yeah, we have just like a quarter of an inch here in the hide, and then there's like 3/4 of an inch in the entire rest of the tub because they've thrown it all out. So it happens.
Nicholas is a very frequent guy on our Sunday. Because whenever we release a video on Sunday, we do chats, right?
Yeah.
Because every Sunday at 11 is a premiere, and so we open the chat at like 10:30, and people hang out. It's a lot of fun. But Nicholas just made a comment that the only cool fat tails were Zulus and
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Patternless. And I like Zulu. I love patternless, but I think he's missing out on whiteout.
Oh,
whiteout is phenomenal. And then this is a whiteout Oreo.
Oh, that is outstanding. That is outstanding. So that's a whiteout Oreo.
Yep.
So Nicholas is saying that the patternless and the Zulus are the only cool ones. So what is he thinking?
I don't know.
I'm picking on you, Nicholas.
I'm a pretty big Oreo fan, and I love whiteout.
Yeah.
Patternless is awesome too.
Patternless is cool.
And then I don't have any, but I have Tangerine Meals, but one of my favorites. I don't know if you know Barry Gardner up at Only Tangs.
Yes.
Yeah, up in Utah.
Yep.
Several people are doing it, but I think the best I've seen in the U.S. so far are Barry's. It's the patternless Tangerine Meals, and then there's also you could throw whiteout into that too. It is a solid orange gecko, bright orange African fat tail gecko from nose to tail tip. The first time Barry showed me a picture of one, I told him that I said, well, that's not real. And he's like, it's real. I have it. It's right here. And phenomenal. And then you throw whiteout in with that Tangerine meal patty. It's crazy.
And there's a big difference there. There's tangerine that are kind of peachy looking, brownish, peachy looking, and then there's the true tangerines. When I started with my African fat tails 15 years ago, I got a male and 3 female tangerines, and they were just as orange as a basketball. And I paid lots and lots of money. And this isn't why I'm in it, but for 4 or 5 years, I got no babies. That hurt. That's beautiful.
That's a tangerine striped meal.
Very nice.
That's a baby.
Yeah. Nanette says she has a preference for Oreos, and that's what's really cool.
I love Oreos.
Everybody's different.
Patternless Oreos are awesome. I love patty Oreos.
Hey, Big G, do you have any Zulus you could show? Do you mind?
I don't. No. I you know what? The first season I bred, I had a Zulu female but I didn't have a Zulu male. I had a male that was, I think he was 50 or 66% het Zulu.
Yeah.
And I never popped a Zulu. So it's not definitive because they're only giving you 6 to 8 babies a year. So by no means could I have said that that's proven now. I just didn't want to keep chasing it. And I got really interested in whiteouts and patternless and Oreo and then the Emil project. And now Barry's got me hooked on the tangerine patty Emils. So I was going to buy a group from Barry. And I said, well, that's cheating. What fun is that? I'm going to try and make my own because I've got plenty of patties. I got plenty of Emils. I've got plenty of whiteout. It's just going to take me 3 years. So, but it's fun.
You're doing it right. You're doing it right. I'm a big believer. It doesn't matter, what you're working with as long as you love what you're working with. If you don't love that animal, then move on and work with the animals that you really, really love. So I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah, one of my favorite boys is he used to be the sweetest guy in the world. He's like a big teddy bear. His name is Picasso. He's probably one on Instagram. He's probably he's always the fat tail that I post on Instagram. He gets 2,000 plus likes. Everybody loves him. And this guy, I used to be able to flip him over. I could do anything I wanted to him. And I did a school event a few weeks ago, and I took him. And in the middle of the school event, Handy Dandy went and took him he was in a deli. No one was touching him. He was just getting passed around and they were looking at him. About halfway through the rotation, she went and got him and brought him back up to me and said, he's not happy. And his mouth was like wide open. And that was about 3 weeks ago. And he's skittish now. So I got to rework him because now every time I go to get him, he starts giving me the little tail thing. And he's like 80 grams. So I'm like, if he bites me, it's going to hurt. So I've been slowly working him back, but I don't know. Let's see if he wants to come out. If he starts wiggling his tail at me, this will be like one of those episodes where the snake like bites your face.
Go ahead and hold on just a second. I'm going to do a screen capture here, and I'll change the thumbnail around so I can get some viral going here.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to hold him up like this to see if we can see.
There you go. But isn't that odd? I've had geckos do the same exact thing. Fine, year, and then just, flip just like that. It is what it is. I flipped a couple of years ago. I was the nicest person. Now I'm just,
now you're waving your tail all the time.
Mouth open all the time.
Grumpy old bear.
He did.
And that likes that though. When I move my tail around like that,
he did let me pick him up for cleaning day the other day. So I'm hoping we're making progress. Plus, you still have those breeding hormones and stuff going on. So who knows what he's. And I only took males to the school event because really every adult female was laying eggs. I'm not going to put them in a box in a cup and take them off to school. So I only took males with me. And for some reason, he doesn't like kids. So
I'm going to tell a real quick story. I apologize for taking up your time here, and we're going to get right back into African fat tails. But I did the same thing. This is 4, 5, 6 years ago with gargos. I had a huge male and a huge female. And they looked exactly the same enclosure and everything. And you know how it is running around before the show. Oh, I've got to take this animal. And this gargoyle was, I would have to say 100 grams, maybe 110 if I remember right. They were both the same exact weight. They looked exact. So grab the cup, in and into the box and show. And then an hour into the show, do you have any gargoyles? Oh, sure, I get this one. I pulled it out, showing. Look how big it is. Everybody stopped by. Oh my gosh, I want to see that gargoyle. So eventually, I'm talking to somebody, and I'm holding the gargoyle, and it goes, wham, right in between my fingers, and grabs on and wouldn't let go. So real quickly, I pulled it down, and I pulled her off and put her back in the cup. And I got my hand under the table, and I looked down, and it's dripping blood. It caught me right at a weird spot. And put it back, put my hand in the pocket, continued to talk, and I think we had one of the kids there, Christopher, take over for a little bit. I went to the washroom, washed it out, came back, And I opened it up like, what just happened here? And I looked closer, and I had grabbed the female rather than the male, and she was gravid, and she was like, you know what? Put me flipping back in the cup. I'm done with this. Stop holding me. So, we assume that they're all exactly the same. They have same behaviors, but every animal is different.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think Chris's comment is for you about shaking your tail feather.
Did he say? Well, if
he
anybody
wants you to have an OnlyFans account.
Standing.
Like, wonder what what would you charge for that? Like $99 a month?
What have I charged? You mean past history?
Yeah, you're making big bucks on OnlyFans, man.
Check out my Wally Kern Lady Marmalade channel, and
we did a live. I don't know if you saw this one, but we did a live on YouTube with Jay from Gecko Geckos, and we had a special guest, George from Elite Geckos.
Yes.
And it was long. I mean, we're like 2 hours into this thing. And finally, I realized that in the living room, and I've been talking to these guys for an hour and a half, and in the living room behind them, there's a pole. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, is that a stripper pole? And George jumps up, runs back to the pole, and starts like spinning on it. So our live went downhill.
Well, I was going to say that would either bring your live way up in numbers or way down, one of the two.
George, it looked like that wasn't his first time either. So
So he had all the moves. He was
killing it.
Yeah. We've got a question from Big LED. I want to say it like that every single time. Big LED, like a radio show or something. How do prices of AFTs compare to leopard geckos?
Their prices are pretty solid. I think it's primarily a supply and demand thing, right? Yeah. So you're seeing more and more African fat tails now, but fat tails are not produced at the same level. They're a fraction of what is being produced for cresteds and leopard geckos. The base, even like a wild type base morph, no morph, right? Just a typical wild type. You'll find people at a show selling those things for $60 or $80, but they're typically like 4 grams. You shouldn't even have taken them to the show because they're gonna die. I get so mad at taking a little baby and taking it to a show, but you know what? It's not my table. So
right.
You can find them for $60, $80. I wouldn't buy one of those.
No.
I would wait until you have a 15, 20 gram animal and it's eating, because a 4 gram animal, 5 gram animal is going to be stressed out from the whole getting shoved in a cup, going to a show, ending up in a new environment. If that little gecko doesn't eat for 2 weeks, he's going to die. He's just not big enough.
Yep.
A 15 gram, 20 gram animal, he can go a month without eating and he's fine, or she's fine. So we like to wait until they're a little bit bigger. So you typically, we end up around $100, $150 for, a base animal, which is, now I don't have any just wild type animals. I have because I'm doing breeding projects. So I'll have an animal that's wild type visually, right, but he's het Oreo, or he's het Patty, or so he's got genetics. But he's, $100, $150.
Wow.
Now you start getting up into, Oreos are, $300, $400. You get into a Patty Oreo, you're $500. You get into a whiteout Patty Oreo, you're $700, $800. There's stuff out there for $2,000, $2,500. Those ghost whiteouts, and I don't work with those, but you start getting into all those Zulu Oreo combinations now. You're $1,500, $2,000. So there's some pretty solid prices. I think that market, you gotta find somebody that wants a fat tail, which is a smaller market than somebody that wants a leopard gecko or a crested gecko. And then you gotta find somebody who wants to pay $1,500 or $2,000 for an African fat tail. So that audience just got smaller, right?
I don't understand that. And I shared earlier that I had started with a group of tangerines. I had one male and 3 or 4 females. I paid well over $6,000 for that group. And I'm not bragging or anything like that. I'm just saying that the price was what it was back then, and it's probably pretty close to that right now. I don't understand the market why African fat tails don't take off at some point. Go look at crested geckos, and the market just took off because of the colors, and people just got it. You look at gargoyles, and as the colors improve, especially with some of the reds and the striping with the reds, and that market took off. And I think the fat tails, I don't think any animal, really compares to a tangerine fat tail or a Zulu or a patternless fat tail. I really don't. I think the quality is right there. I just don't know why the market hasn't come up to that, which is good for those wanting to get into fat tails because they're, I don't want to say reasonable. You get a quality animal and you're going to pay a quality price, but you're not going to pay what I feel is an exorbitant amount for a high-end crested. I'm not going out and paying $10,000 for a crested gecko, nor the same for a gargoyle. I'm just not,
Yeah, you can get on the top end of a fat tail, you're in the 2,000, 2,500 range. And that's a very small fraction. I mean, you can get a gorgeous animal for $800,000.
Yeah.
But it depends on what you like. You might like brown with black bands, and you're going to get one for $100. So it just depends on what you like. So, yeah, I agree. Termites. I don't know. I don't know if I want termites.
Baby, hey, Lito, tell us what you're talking about. Termites for babies. What kind of babies?
I get. I mean, that's one of the things. Crickets get out all the time, but crickets have such a short lifespan; they're going to die. Dubia roaches get out; they're not going to reproduce or propagate here. Definitely not at where you live.
No.
So they're going to probably live longer in Louisiana in the summer, but they're not going to make it through the winter. So they're going to die. Mealworms are going to turn into beetles. I'm going to throw them away. So I don't, that's kind of why I gave up on the black soldier flies, because they eventually turn into flies, and then I had to deal with them.
Great food item, but the hassle is far more than the value, I think.
Yeah, phenomenal animal. I mean, phenomenal nutritional value, but not every one of my animals would eat them, and then they ultimately turned into flies. So it was more of a pain than it was worth. So I punted.
One of the questions that I have about fat tails is, do you ever encounter any issues with fat tails that you don't see with maybe other animals? With your leopard geckos, do you see any issues with fat tails? Do they go off of feed? Is it, I don't know, the babies? Any issues with the babies not eating? Anything like that?
Some of the observational things that I've noticed, it is more common to see pinworms because they primarily eat crickets. And if they're eating crickets, then you're going to get pinworms. All animals have parasites. It's just a matter of how healthy their immune system is and how well they balance that. So I've never had an issue where I've had a parasitic balance problem. So they grow, they gain weight. It's just every once in a while you'll find a pinworm or a couple pinworms, and they're there. I never see them in a leopard gecko tank because I don't feed crickets or leopard gecko tub. So that's something to be aware of, and you just have to make sure that if you get out of balance, that your gecko is not going to absorb its nutritional contents, and it's going to start losing weight, and you're going to have to treat it. I've never had to, but it's something to be aware of. I've noticed I think I've only ever had one, maybe two leopard gecko babies lose a tail. And it was because their clutch mate probably bit it.
Yeah.
I've seen more tail drops. So my baby fat tails, in my experience, I don't know that this is a true statement, I'm just giving you what I've seen, is my baby fat tails are more prone to tail drops than leopard geckos. So this season so far, I've only had one, But last year I had quite a bit. I think I probably had 8% of my babies dropped a tail, or at least a portion of a tail. So, which is uncommon. You don't see that with leopard geckos. So it seems like tail drops for babies is a little more common, at least from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. But not radical. We're not talking about.
No, it's not like half of your animals.
Yeah.
But they do seem to come off easy. Now, I've never had one come off when I'm handling the animal. I'll open the bin to feed or clean or spray, and there's a tail laying there. So I don't even know what happened. It's, for whatever reason, it's more common, or has been more common with fat tail babies than with leopard gecko babies.
Let me ask this. How soon do you separate your fat tails? I'm assuming that they hatch out. One hatches out, you put it in the grow out bin, and another one hatches out 2, 3, maybe 3 days later, the same day, whatever. You put that one right in with this first one as clutch mates. How long do you keep them together?
I'll keep them together. It really depends on their size. So if they're growing at the same rate, they'll stay together for 3-4 months, maybe even 5. It's not common that I still have them after 5 or 6 months.
And you're feeding obviously a lot of live foods, so there's going to be some chasing and
you're biting for a cricket so that's the other thing that's with fat tails is there's crickets running around, where in a leopard gecko enclosure there's crickets aren't running around, they're going over to the food dish. So that's one of my theories, is a cricket's sitting on your little buddy's tail and other little buddies like, hey, that's a cricket. And so that is highly likely based on a hunting response. So they'll state. So typically what will happen is if one of them starts growing faster than the other, I have a food competition problem. So I got to separate them. So that could be as early as 3 weeks. You'll see that. And they're apart now, and I got to get them both on track. Usually by the time you get to 4 or 5 months, one of the two has probably sold, and I've just naturally gone down to one. I very rarely get the 5-6 months, and I still have both clutch mates, and I have to separate them.
I'm doing the same thing with the leopard geckos. It's not the same exact thing, but it's very similar. I'll keep them together for 2, 3, 4 months maybe. Crested geckos, on the other hand, I get to about 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm starting to feed more and more live foods, and I feed a lot of mealworms to baby crested geckos, and I'll start seeing some of that aggressive behavior. Mealworm goes in, and a crested gecko will jump across the tub to get that mealworm. So the thing that looks so similar to a mealworm, another crested gecko tail. So once I start feeding the mealworms, within days, a week at the most, I'll start separating the clutch mates. So just something that we do.
Yeah. Hey, the other thing I forgot to mention is I have found, and I've talked to other breeders that haven't experienced this, so it could be specific to me. I'm not making it as a general statement, but I find my female fat tails during breeding season lose substantial body weight percentages. The good news is they typically only lay 3, 4, sometimes 5 clutches, so that season's pretty compressed, and they bounce back, man. They're it only takes a few months. By this time they're fattening up again because they stopped laying in March. So but I've had some that lose a lot of body weight.
That's really super key kind of point there. So it's just something that people should kind of start watching for. Keep a little bit of a closer eye on your African fat tails and leopard geckos. Leopard geckos, obviously, I think I know what you're saying here, is that they'll start losing some weight as they progress through the breeding season.
Yeah, I mean, you might have a 68-gram animal that goes down to 62.
Yes.
But 68 to 40, you're like, I got to get you a burger and a shake and some fries because you need something. And then they'll stop eating. They eat the whole time. It's just, I just think that egg production is really really hard on those females.
Yes. Speaking of that, do you do anything different with your leopard geckos than leopard geckos and African fat tails from a supplementation standpoint?
No, it's calcium with D3 and Herbivite. I use Repcal calcium and Repcal Herbivite. Little calcium dish is always in the enclosure, and their food is dusted with a 1:1 ratio of both. So it's the same. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's the same. Yeah. The biggest difference, this question comes up a lot, and I don't even know if we've seen it tonight. I think Andrew asked it last time right before we stopped, and we didn't answer it. It was about brumation.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the biggest difference about breeding fat tails. And I can't definitively answer the question, because when I first decided I wanted to have fat tails and breed fat tails, everything that I read or saw about fat tails said the only way to be successful is to brumate them. And so what I didn't want to do is go into my first season and be like, all that information is wrong and get 0 eggs. So I'm like, well, it's working for these guys, so I'm going to do it the way they do it. And so, I want to start breeding them in December. So in middle of October, I'll stop feeding them for about a week, because anytime you're going to bring down those temperatures and brumate an animal, you got to clean them out.
Yes.
Otherwise that food will just sit in there and rot. So I'll go about a week without giving them any food, and then water. They always get water. And then after a week, to make sure they're all cleaned out, I'll bring down every day I'll bring down the temperature 2 degrees every day. So I'll wake up tomorrow, I'll bring it down 2 more, until I get them. I keep them at 90 until I get that temperature down to about 74, 75. I can't get much lower than that just because of the ambient room temperature. I could keep bringing the thermostat down, but they're not going to get to that temperature because the room's 74 degrees. So I basically get them down to about 74 degrees. I'll let them sit there. So if you think about that, I'm coming down 15 degrees, 16 degrees. It takes me 7 days, 8 days. So it takes me a week to get them down. I let them sit there for 2 weeks, and then I do it again the other way. I bring them up 2 degrees a day until I get them back up to 90, and then I start power feeding them. And then start pairing them up, about middle of December, first, second week of December, and off we go.
And there's another point. I think this is such not a controversial, it's just an understood kind of a concept, the whole brumation. I did the same thing, Big G, when I first started with leopard geckos. This intro web says to go ahead and brumate them. I don't know any different. Sure, I'll drop the temperatures, but what you won't see is exactly what you just said, is you've got to bring them down and stop the feeding and waves and everything. I give 3 waves over about a month and a half or so, maybe even 2 months. Everybody's different, but I'll bring them down and I'll change the light cycle as well at the same time. I've never concerned myself with bringing them up. When it's the end of February, man, I'm lights on, baby. Let's go. Throw that heater on. Let's do it. But you're right. I'm just pounding the food in them by that.
Yeah, they didn't eat for 3-4 weeks, so you got. They're hungry.
Yep.
Yeah. Here's my caveat to that, though, is I don't do it with first years.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm not brumating first year females, and they still breed. So was brumation really necessary? And I just haven't been willing. I haven't had a big enough group of fat tails to say, I'm going to set these 4 aside this year and we're going to test it. If I set 4 aside, I just cut my production in half. So, I haven't been willing to take that risk just to know. But I do know that first years I don't brumate because I don't want them to stop growing. So I need to keep them at 90 degrees and I need to feed them, because otherwise they're not going to breed because they're not going to be big enough. So you kind of get yourself in a catch-22. I don't brumate the first year females and they breed. So now they typically don't breed until March versus the other girls are breeding in December and January. Might be brumation, but it might just be they're not old enough. So
right. Exactly. there's so many factors. You can't say I don't start my animals until March, and let that be the overriding kind of general term. You have to precede it with so many other pieces of information. You mentioned the 1 year. You mentioned maybe the weight. There's just so many other factors. So viewers, when you're asking these questions, when you're reading online, don't just stop at brumation is important. Don't stop there. Keep working through the process. And eventually when you get done with the article or watching a video like this, stop and then in your mind think, is that how it happens in nature? Really? Well, yeah, brumation does happen in nature, but start putting those pieces together and use all of these pieces to come up with what you feel comfortable with doing. Absolutely. Good call.
I've never brumated a leopard gecko once, and
no problem.
But there are people that do it, and it works both ways. I mean, they're such resilient animals that they'll. It's interesting. You know what I tell people is, they say, well, I'm not doing it the way you do it. And I say, yeah, but is your way working? And they say, yeah. I said, well, then don't stop.
Don't stop. Don't change a thing.
Yeah, keep doing it. So I had a guy, I know sand is like this crazy thing, right? I had a guy I worked with in Vegas that, you know, when his kids were little, they had a leopard gecko, and then the kids grew up, went to college, and now mom and dad have a leopard gecko. And he found out that, you know, I was into geckos and started talking about it one day, and you know, he goes to the website and he reads the care sheet, and he comes back to my office. And he's like, I got a problem, man. I got an overhead light, a heat lamp. I got this gecko on sand. I've been feeding it crickets. It's gonna die. And I said, Jay, how old is it? He says, like 13 years old. I'm like, don't change a thing. Leave it alone. Keep feeding it. So
it's hard.
13 years. So you know what? If it was 3 weeks old, I'd probably try to recommend some changes. It's 13 years old. It works.
I was like that with fish when I first started, and I started breeding discus. If you know what that is, kind of like
absolutely.
Yeah, and I was doing great, but I was getting like 30 babies instead of the 75 or 80. So I started changing this and started changing that, and then you know a couple of pairs went down and gave me 10 babies. I eventually said, you know what, 30 works for me. It works for me. I'm comfortable with that, and I was, you know, peachy keen with 30 babies per adult. Peachy keen. That's a thing. Peachy keen is a thing.
Andrew has an interesting question about you know, I don't have scientific proof of this, but I don't think it's as much about the temperature as it is the barometric pressure. I think that these animals are like, you know, little barometers, and they're you know, they're not even necessarily sunlight cycles. They're because you can black out your room and they don't know if it's day or night.
Yeah.
I think that they have like they're little barometers, and they understand the seasonal changes based on the natural change of the barometric pressure. And that's how they know what time it is. And fortunately for North America, our temperatures change pretty significantly over a different. You're still getting snow, and I'm sitting on the beach drinking a Corona. So I don't think they care. I don't think they care about that. I think it's more about barometric pressure. I haven't proved that. So my breeding cycle from Canada back down to here, Andrew, was essentially the same. Fat tails were identical. I do think that my leopard geckos came out of the gate a little later this season than last season, but I had a ton of first-year females this year. So I don't think it has anything to do with Louisiana versus Canada. I just think I picked a lot of first-year females. So.
And I completely agree with you. And the more research I do, the more I'm finding out that it's not just temperature and humidity. It's barometric pressure. So you can go on Google Scholar and you can look up to your heart's content. But if you're not sure and you're not of what you're looking for, and you're not looking for all these different factors, then you're getting part of the picture. What you need to do is think about these other things like barometric pressure. You need to think about wind. You know, even though it's 90, is this a coastal region where there's a lot of wind? pounding at that, temperature and dropping it down. And there's just so many factors. But what we're talking about, what I'm talking about, I should say, is, an animal that's pretty close to nature. It's not one that's been captive bred for, several generations. So I think the more that we breed animals in captivity, the further away from some of those kind of factors that we get. And I completely agree with you, though, that the main factors there, one of the main factors could be barometric pressure. Absolutely. Good call.
Now you can, I don't know about anybody doing, opposite cycles on fat tails, but plenty of large breeders do dual cycles on leopard geckos, right?
Right.
I think Steve runs like different buildings, and he'll have one building temperature controlled and light controlled to trick them into thinking that October is really March, and that way he's doing production all year. I've not actually been there. I haven't seen it. I've heard that.
I've heard,
and it makes sense. It makes sense. There's just not enough people working with fat tails, and certainly very few people working with fat tails on a large scale. Steve might be the biggest on fat tails.
I would think so. I know JMG had fat tails going years ago. I think
they still do. They're producing some amazing animals, but I don't know that they're putting the quantities out that Steve puts out.
Exactly. And again, it's more of a market kind of thing than supply and demand. But so this leads to my next question, maybe my final. I think we've covered a lot of information on fat tails. Where do you see the African fat tail market hobby in 5 years?
That's a really good question. I think we've been doing it. I think this is my 4th season now with fat tails. And every year I've upped my production, and every year I sell out. So, some of that is demand driven, but also some of it is I'm generating awareness because more people know who Luna Geckos is now than they did 4 years ago.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you can't just say all the demand's going up. Your awareness is going up at the same time. So it's the market. I feel that the market's strong. I almost always have fat tails at a show, and people love them. Obviously, a lot less people know what it is than know what a crested gecko or a leopard gecko is. They're like, "What's that?" But there are plenty of people that know what it is. There are plenty of people now that are coming specifically because they know I have fat tails, and that's what they want. So it's interesting. I think that it's growing. It's probably, I bet it's probably similar to maybe a gargoyle market, size wise. Gargoyles are popular, but they're not anywhere near as popular as crested geckos.
Right.
And so if you're gonna put gargoyles, if you're gonna rank the new cow species, cresteds are winning, gargoyles are right there. It's the same thing on this side, with these terrestrial animals where you got leopard geckos, and then fat tails are, in second, but it's not a close second. They're in second. And the cool thing about fat tails is fat tails are at a point right now where there are morphs, there are genes, there's recessive genes, there's dominant genes. There are new combinations being created every year.
Yes.
There's going to be, the more people that work with them, there's going to be more genetics that are discovered. It's where leopard geckos were. I don't know, pick a number. 12 years ago.
Yeah, maybe
2008, maybe.
Yeah.
Back when every day somebody was creating a new combo, or we're not at that frenzy level with African fat tails, but
Not
what's
even
really
close.
No, not close. But what's cool about it is I think we're at that stage of the evolution, of the genetic evolution, where we have enough genes to work with, and more are going to show up, right? So we have enough to work with to create all these cool combinations, and that's going to result in new genes popping out. So
what I hear you saying is that in 5 years, The Luna Geckos facility will be 98.6% African fat tails. If I'm understanding it correctly, did I catch that correct? Or am I wrong?
No, well, I produce
Who knows?
No, but if I was going to rank what goes on here, leopard geckos, I produce the leopard geckos, a couple hundred leopard geckos a year. I was hoping to produce about 300 animals this year total. It's going to be light. I'm going to be somewhere between 200 and 250. My fault. I did a lot of holdbacks, let go of a lot of proven breeders, and went with a ton of first-year breeders, and just didn't get the same production that I get out of a second or a third-year animal. So I'm getting mostly what I want. It's just my egg count and my production is down. So I'm probably going to be between 200 and 250. Incubators are both full. I don't know. I have 130, 140 animals out at this point. But if I was going to do that number system, 170, 180 leopard geckos, 40, 50 fat tails, and the rest are just a mix of new cow species. Actually, this year, Urodactylodes is winning. They're crushing it. So
we had a question asking how your Urodactylodes is doing. Then I want to come back to Nicholas's question, but let's talk about your little guys, your dinosaurs.
They are talk about an underrated gecko. I love these little guys. And I did a live a little bit ago, and someone asked a question. Oh, you know what? It wasn't a live. It was I had a Lafayette show a couple weeks ago, and I had 2 Urodactylodes velardi and 1 agricoli at that show, and people were like, "What is that?" And one guy knew what they were, and one of his questions was, "How do you house them? And have you found them to be, carnivorous? Do they eat their babies?" Right? So my problem is I house all my new cows are in bioactives. So egg hunting is a royal pain in the butt. And it is very common that I find babies. I'll come down in the morning, turn the lights on, and there's a baby hanging out at the food dish. I'm like, oh, got to get him out. And then it's common also to find an empty egg and no baby. So, you know what happened to that one.
So you have all 23 species of Urodactylodes, right?
It's interesting because Urodactylodes is actually its own genus. It's classified as a genus, and then so it's not subspecies. There are 4 species under the genus Urodactylodes. So it's velardi, agricoli, symmetricus, and occidentalis. I have a 1-2 group of velardi, a 1-2 group of agricoli, and I have actually a 2-1 group of occidentalis.
Nice.
I wanted a 1-2 group. They're not together. They're all 3 separate right now. The female was still a little bit small, so I'm waiting until the end of the summer before I put a male in with her. And so the 2 males are unrelated, so I just went ahead and bought them both. And so that way I can take babies from the 1-1 group and then bring them back over to the male that's sitting in the bullpen. And I can have a whole second group of occidentalis unrelated. So we'll see how that works out. So I've never hatched an occidentalis. I don't currently have symmetricus, but occidentalis, velardi, and agricoli are care breeding almost identical. You treat them exactly the same. What I've been told, I think you were dealing with Gecko, right, up in Reno? Gecko,
yes. Yep.
The most knowledgeable Urodactylodes guy that I've come across. He's amazing. I'm trying to get a symmetricus group. He basically said for breeding symmetricus, the only difference, so temperature and environment, essentially the same. For successful breeding, they lean a little heavier on insects than they do on crested gecko diet. They eat the crested gecko diet, but you got to supplement to be successful with the symmetricus for production. You got to load them up with insects, and these are small animals, so you can't throw a cricket in there.
No,
I've been most successful with flightless fruit flies.
Oh,
because
really? Okay.
yeah, they're not overly. They'll eat small crickets, but they're not overly fast, so they're not really good hunters. They kind of need it to like step on their nose, and then they're like, "Hey, I'll eat that." So flightless fruit flies are even dumber than crickets. So that's what I use. I will throw small because I breed crickets, so I will throw some pinhead crickets and stuff in there. I've been most successful with the flightless fruit flies though. And there's isopods in there and springtails, and
yeah,
might be eating them. I don't know. Now, here's what's interesting is I did find it's so easy to find their eggs because they don't. So there's the bioactive soil, and then there's some leaf litter, and then I have a layer of spag moss.
Yep.
And these guys don't dig. They just go right under the spag moss, drop their eggs, put the spag moss back on. So to find these eggs, I don't even touch the soil. I just lift the spag carpet and I'm like, white dot, white dot, white dot. So I'm in there like a farmer picking out chicken eggs. Then you just put the spag moss down and off you go.
it's like lifting my 2K.
I did miss a couple the other day. And I had two baby Velardes hanging out on a branch up front, just looking at me the other morning. So I'm like, oh, better get them out of there.
Yeah,
So,
I tell you what, viewers, if you haven't seen these Urodactyloides, go up into the comments. The genus name is up there. Look them up. They're just the cutest, easily handleable gecko. I've had a lot of success with mealworms, Big G. I throw a
small, but you breed mealworms, so you have small.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't breed mealworms.
Yeah, right. They have to be small. Let's go ahead and grab this last question here on leopard geckos, and then I have a 5 hit it or miss kind of quickie questions for you, and then I tell you, I don't, unless somebody has another question about African fat tails. This has been a great experience. It's been my pleasure having you on. But let's get this last question here from Nicholas Aaron. It's I'm going to get a 2020 female. I have a 2019 never bred female. I'm going to get a 2018-19 male. Should I brumate to be safe or just try and see what happens?
He's asking about leopard geckos.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is not a definitive answer because there are people that do it both ways, Nicholas. I don't brumate leopard geckos. So I would bring them in. If this was me, I'd bring them in. I'd quarantine them, for a month or so, depending on who I got them from. If I got them from Scarborough, they're probably going right in the rack. They're probably not getting quarantined. So it depends on who I got them from.
Right.
I'll quarantine them. I'll make sure they're healthy. They're going right into the system with everybody else. I don't brumate leopard geckos.
I'm right there with you. Set them aside, make sure they're eating, make sure they're healthy, make sure they're pooping, and then let's go, guys. Let's do this.
Yeah. You make that call out to the bullpen. You're like, I need a lefty. Get in here.
Put some Marvin Gaye music on and let's go.
Let's get it going.
Get off the pot. Let's go, guys. God,
now, if I brought in, since this was a fat tail show, if I brought in a fat tail, adult fat tail, I would brumate them. If I brought in a juvenile fat tail that was not mature yet, I would not brumate them because I want to keep feeding them.
Yeah.
So, if I have a juvenile that doesn't make weight and size to be able to breed, then I'll just sit them out. But I don't brumate them.
Absolutely. One of our big viewers and supporters, Bob, says peanut beetles, baby. I feel like Patrick Kane. Peanut beetles, baby.
Have you tried peanut beetles with your how big are? I watched your video where you eat peanut beetles, but how big are they big?
They're not. The cool thing is that I have a lot of micros. So, crested gecko is a big gecko in our facility. So most of my geckos are probably your finger width or length, and that's about it. So peanut beetles are a great source of an additional food for my geckos. So if you're feeding babies, baby leopard geckos, baby African fat tails, peanut beetles are a absolutely great option.
The
Easy to
larvae, though.
the larvae,
Not the
not
beetle.
the beetles. Good point. Good point, Minette.
I wonder if have you tried? Will Urodactylotes eat those?
I don't know why I haven't tried it. I guess because I've had my reason for doing peanut beetles was just in case I couldn't get micromealworms. And the last 6 months we've always had 40,000 on hand, so I just reach in and grab a chunk of them. But yeah, that's a great point. I don't know why I haven't fed them. I'm sure that they would though. So peanut beetle larvae are just a little bit fatter, and they tend to wiggle. They don't crawl around the mealworm cup. They'll sit mostly in one position and just, can you see that? They'll wiggle back and forth.
Yeah, right as you said that, I bumped my screen, so it was like it was good effects. I was like, man, the net is doing some production. Ready, go. But that's so you're gonna get that hunting or feeding response because
exactly.
That's interesting. What did you end up getting on Urodactylotes? I saw your unboxing. Was that Agricoli or Velarde?
I got both, and I got a 1-1.
You did get a 1-1 of both? Yeah.
I tend to wait. I don't mind getting an animal and waiting a year, but they're big enough. That's my goal tomorrow is to go through some of the smaller ones that I recently purchased and see if they're ready to go for this year. I might hold off. I might not.
Well, my Velarde group. So I have a 1-2 group of Velardes, 1-2 group of Agricoles. They're in a 12 by 12 by 18 bioactive. All three of them. I don't separate them. They live together, and I've had these geckos now for I think I've had the Velardes for going on 2 years, and I'm well over a year with the Agricoles. I bought them when I was in Canada, so they're Canadian. Yeah, I bought both the Agricoli and the Velardes from Northern Gecko.
Do they speak Canadian, eh?
Yeah, they have dual citizenship, so they can cross the border anytime they want. And the Occidentalis I just recently got those. A couple 3 months ago. So I'm just waiting for them. They're U.S. citizens.
Nice. Congratulations. Those are great.
Well, they're from New York. If you're from New York, are you still a U.S. citizen?
Let me look it up. Oh, hell no.
I thought you had to give it up. When I thought Cuomo, like, you had to mail it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, it's a political show now. We can't talk.
Yeah, now you're in trouble.
Your channel is going to get taken down.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
We're going to take your channel down.
We've got somebody in the back telling us now. Just shut it down. Okay, so
you got to do that thing, Wally. You got to be like, the views of our guests do not represent the views of the program, and that whole disclaimer they always do on talk shows. You got to start putting that up.
What Bob has said, I can neither confirm nor deny. Actually, I'll go back to this. Would apply to some of the things I say. I'll go back to the Adam Sandler. What you have said is the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my life. In fact, you have made the entire room stupider for listening to you. I award you no points. God have mercy on your soul.
Oh man.
Okay. Let's wrap it up here with a few hit it and quit it kind of questions.
I got to towel off and get ready. Hold on.
There you go. I think you were sweating since Andrew made the comment about me moving my butt. So
I gotta stop. I gotta stop doing lives in the gecko room. It's too hot in here.
I can imagine. What is it? 80? Probably in the high 70s.
78, and I turned the air conditioner down 2 degrees before I came in, just to try to get it down a little bit, but it's not helping. So
we're in Wisconsin. I opened a window and I have icicles hanging down from my ears. So okay, first question. We're going to cover 5 here really, really, really quick. You don't get more than 2 sentences per answer, so bear with me for that. So very.
Like you could do that.
No, that's why I give this to somebody. I don't do it myself.
I'm Italian, so I still get to use my hands, though.
You do. Yes. You do, but that counts for half of a sentence. Okay. What's your favorite sports team? You knew I was starting with this.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
You have a reason for Pittsburgh Steelers?
I grew up. So let's see if I'm doing this the right way. Yeah, this is the right way. I grew up in
that. She said loser.
I grew up in.
That's sure what he was trying to do.
I grew up in West Virginia, and so West Virginia has this eastern panhandle over here. This is Ohio. This is Pennsylvania, Maryland down here, right? So West Virginia, this little sliver, Pittsburgh is right there. So from my hometown, I could get to the Pittsburgh International Airport faster than you could from downtown Pittsburgh to the Pittsburgh International Airport. So I grew up 40 minutes out of downtown Pittsburgh. So basically a Pittsburgh suburb, although it happened to be in a different state.
Well, if you're going to choose a team, I mean, you know, even though it wasn't an immaculate reception, you picked a really, really good team.
Every camera angle I've ever seen of that, it was a catch.
I completely agree.
Because there's only one camera angle.
This is true. There is only one. So let's see. Ohio. You're talking about Ohio, Pennsylvania. So this would be Wisconsin. So if we took it, never mind. Okay. So the next question is: you're in your gecko room. You're in your gecko room, and you want to stay busy and just get the mojo going. What's the song that's playing in the background?
I typically don't put music on. I do have.
At the show.
I have a Bose speaker over here, and I generally listen to podcasts or YouTube channels. And sometimes it doesn't work. I lose productivity because somebody will be talking about a particular gecko, and I'm like, oh, I got to see that. So I got to put down the tub and I got to run over and look at my phone. But 90% of it you can listen to, and you don't have to actually watch it. So I'm typically listening to, you know, reptile related. It's not just gecko stuff. Like, you know, I like Brian. I like Cusco's channel. I like Garrett Hartle. He does, you know, Reach Out Reptiles. So, you know, I listen to a lot of folks.
I do the same thing. I turn on Order Exotics and DEA Exotics whenever I go into my gecko room to listen to the podcast or videos. So
yeah, lives are the best because you typically don't have to be able to. You don't typically have to watch.
Exactly.
You know, it's more like a radio show or a podcast. So lives are my favorite, and they're longer. There's nothing worse than you put on a 12-minute video and then it auto plays something else that you didn't want to listen to.
Exactly.
You know.
I end up listening to probably 2 or 3 shows, and then I just throw on, you know, a music channel just to finish the day out.
If I do
more than 2 sentences,
what we need is more content, because you can only listen to the same podcast 7 times, and then you're like, man, somebody's got to release something. So if I do have to turn on music, it's usually like party country music, you know, which has a little bit of it's like you know, like it's more beachy, not like hardcore dog died, got hit by a train, you know, mom has cancer, you know. It's more sitting on a boat drinking a beer, Kenny Chesney, you know, that kind of, that kind of more fun.
Okay, I'll go with that. Waylon Willie, no.
I don't mind it. Listen, I don't have a particular genre. I was a DJ in high school and college, and my genre spans everything. So,
I'll mention. I know this show is about you, but I'll mention that when I turn on music to get me going, people are going to think that I'm nuts, but it's either Pink Floyd, it's AC/DC, or it's Linkin Park. It's something just really
like just like hard. You're a heavy metal guy. Hey, exactly. Did you see the news story? Roger Waters and Mark Zuckerberg.
Yes.
Now we're definitely going to get kicked off of you. No, that's Facebook. We're fine. Your Facebook channel is now shut down, though. For those of you that haven't seen it, go Google The Wall, Pink Floyd offer or something like that. Zuckerberg made they haven't said what the number amount was, but Roger said it was a grotesque amount of money. Yes. And he did a press conference to respond to the offer with some expletives. So
I think his exact words were, "Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate the offer, but at this time, our legal assistants have." Yeah, no, he didn't say anything like that. Hey, I saw you just bought this is the third question. I saw that you just bought a brand new car sitting in your driveway, your dream car, the car that you've always wanted, but I couldn't tell what that car was. What is the car that you just bought?
Man, I have an affinity for muscle cars. I'd buy a '69 Camaro.
There you go. There you go. I think if it were me, it would be it would have to be a Plymouth Roadrunner with the big, the big wing in back. But I tell you, number 2 would be a '69 Camaro. Well done. Well
What
done.
color?
My hand is almost off for you.
That's tricky. I'm not cliche. My brother-in-law had one when I was a kid, and it was like a canary yellow. It was really cool. And I ended up painting a motorcycle. I had a motorcycle when I was a teenager that I painted the same color as his car. So I really dig that yellow, but I probably wouldn't do it. I'd probably do something more classic, like a black. I'm not a red sports car kind of guy. I like black. Black's a pain though, because you got to get somebody else to clean it.
Yes, I've had black cars. They're a pain. So
when have you ever had a black car?
Before I met you, that wasn't mine. That was my prior girlfriend. Gray. I do always get gray. Okay, so you just drove into your driveway. You parked the car. You got out of it. You went in the house. What do the two of you watch for a movie? It's like you're flipping through the channels and this one movie comes on and you both say, "Oh, this is cool," and put down the remote. What is that movie?
Boy, we're pretty challenged. I always want to watch shoot 'em ups. I call them shoot 'em ups. Genre is an action or a drama, or I really like that intellectual. I like action, but I also like it to be a true story or based on a true story, because I like to learn something while I'm being entertained. Handy Dandy's more of a rom-com. She likes true stories too. I will tell you the movie that we have watched most recently and most often is the new Cruella movie, the new Disney movie. We actually resubscribed to Disney to be able to download that movie. And I think she's watched it 5 times and I'm on 3 times at this point. It's really good. It's really good.
A great recommendation. Thank you very much.
Kid friendly?
It is kid friendly. It's a Disney movie, so absolutely, yeah. Crystal would really like it.
Okay.
I mean, it's a modern. Well, it's not modern. It's a retelling of the how Cruella de Vil came to be, right? So it's a prequel, I guess. It takes 101 Dalmatians back to when Cruella was a baby.
Okay.
And says it shows you how she became who she is. It was really good.
It sounds like it would be a good movie for Crystal. I mean, I can get her to watch just so much of The Goodfellas and The Godfather, and she just walks out on me. So we'll try that movie for her.
Yeah, you know what? We're big on TV. I like TV shows because it's why I like magazines or articles versus books, because I want a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I want it fast.
Yeah.
So we're more of our TV shows, and lately we've been watching the new the new crime. It's the Law and Order, but it's the crime, organized crime. Law and Order, organized crime. It's a brand new. They've only had 5 or 6 episodes. It's on Thursdays. It's all about the mob and organized crime, and it's pretty good. It's all set in New York. Andrew just said he would have a Mercury Cougar.
Yeah,
I felt Andrew feels like what's that car called? The Cuda. Yeah. Andrew seems like a Cuda kind of guy.
Yeah, I could see him in just a jet black, one white stripe down the side. Yeah, absolutely. He probably rocked that, as a youngster. I mean, but he would be like 7 at that time. So, okay, here's our last question of the night. When you got out of your car and before you started watching the movie that you liked so much, you brought in your absolutely, oh my gosh, I can't believe I now own this gecko. And you walked downstairs and put it away. What did you put away?
That's a trick. That's a trick question.
Think about it for a second. There's so many out there. In my mind, there's just so many. It would be hard to.
There are so many. I tell you, I think Jay at Gecko Geckos has the single best male black knight that I've ever seen in my life. So if I was going to talk about leopard geckos, I really like that. I like that male. I like what Brian's doing. If I was going to talk about crested geckos, I like what Brian's doing with the exanthics.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm digging the exanthic lily whites because I just said I like black knights.
Yeah.
I like the black. I like the black or crested geckos too. So probably a visual exanthic if I was on crested. I don't dislike lily whites. I like darker animals.
Yeah.
So.
For me, crested geckos, I love any color as long as it's red.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on our show. I feel honored. I again apologize for the last show. I think we got some good material out of there. It really hit, and I can't tell you how much time I've spent trying to figure this out, and all it is really a cable. But anyways, this has been a great show. I appreciate it so much. I hope our viewers have appreciated it. If you like the show, say I like the show or hit the like button or do something. But most important, go over to Luna Geckos YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok now because you're dancing on TikTok, and visit Big G.
I got to work on my TikTok moves. I can't do that. Can Crystal do that? What's that thing that you got to do with your?
The back thing, yeah.
I don't know how to do that. Anyway, Wally, thank you so much, and I do have to compliment you because the new internet connection you are a beautiful man. It really highlights your best features now that you're on, high quality internet connection, high speed 4K. You might even be 5K. Look at that. Flawless.
Well, I'm 5-star for sure. Yeah, it was just the haircut.
We got the haircut. That took care of that.
This high def, you can see almost all the way to my consoles. I tell you, this is nuts. All right,
you guys both, Nanette, thank you so much. Appreciate everything that you guys do, and looking forward to your Christmas drive this year. We certainly want to participate, and I'm positive I'll talk to you 300 times between now and then. So
you're saying you don't want to talk to me as much as we've talked before? So
yeah, I'm in 300 times a day. So
yeah, exactly. Right. Thank you very much.
We'll see you guys later. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.